All right, ready to dive into some serious productivity talk? Today we're going to unpack getting things done.
GTD.
GTD, right? I've skimmed through some excerpts you sent over from David Allen's book.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to say, this guy seems like a productivity guru, right? I mean, the Wall Street Journal, Fortune, everyone's raving about him.
Yeah, he's definitely made a big impact, and for good reason, I think.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
The system he created, it really addresses like a universal problem, right? How do we deal with all this stuff in our lives
Sure.
and stay sane?
Yeah, all this stuff. I think that's something we can all relate to, right? I mean, we've all been there.
For sure.
Staring at a to-do list that's, a mile long and just feeling completely overwhelmed. Like, where do I even begin?
Yeah, that feeling of being stuck. Right?
Scott!
Like you're drowning in your in basket.
In the in-basket, yeah.
Alan says that's the problem, and he argues that, our traditional to-do lists and calendars,
They don't work.
they're just not enough anymore. They're not cutting it, you know what I mean?
Okay, so what's the solution?
Well, he introduces this really interesting idea. Mind like water.
Okay, I gotta be honest, that sounds a little too zen for me,
I get it, but it's actually very practical when you
Yeah,
break it down.
Okay, how so?
So think about it. Imagine a pebble being dropped into a still pond,
Okay.
right?
Oh, yeah.
The water ripples, right? Reacts to that disturbance.
Yeah.
But then it quickly becomes still again.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Right. And that's what our mind should be like. We should be able to react to all the inputs, the stuff coming at us, but without, getting completely thrown off balance.
So we need to be responsive, but not reactive, right?
Exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot, of relaxed control.
Okay, I like that.
That's really the foundation of the GTD system, being able to achieve that state where you're not overwhelmed.
So how do we get there? How do we get to mind like water? Because honestly, I struggle with that all the time,
Well, the good news is Alan lays out a really clear path. He breaks it down into 5 stages.
5 stages. Okay, let's hear them.
So the first stage is capture. It's all about collecting everything that has your attention, getting it out of your head.
Everything. That seems a bit daunting, to be honest.
I know, it can feel overwhelming, but it's also super liberating.
How so?
Well, think about it. All that stuff swirling around your mind, it takes up so much mental energy, right?
Yeah.
Once you capture it, you free up all that space for thinking, for creating, for actually getting things done.
Okay, I'm starting to see the appeal.
Right. It's like clearing out your mental clutter.
Okay, so we capture everything, then what?
Then comes clarify. That's where you start making decisions about what each item means.
Okay, so we're talking about processing all that stuff we captured.
Exactly. Figuring out what needs to be done, what can be delegated, what can be tossed, what can be saved for later.
So it's all about making conscious choices, being intentional about how we spend our time and energy. All right, I like this. What's next?
Next is organize. That's where you start putting things into the right buckets, creating lists, setting up systems.
I love lists.
Right. But it's not just about making lists. It's about creating a system that works for you, that you can actually stick with.
Okay, that's where I usually fall apart. I start with the best of intentions, I get all organized, and then a week later, it's all gone to heck.
Right. That's where the 4th stage comes in. Reflect.
Reflect. Okay.
This is all about reviewing your system, making sure it's still working, tweaking it as needed.
So it's like a regular check-in with our productivity system.
Exactly. Alan calls it the weekly review, and he's a big believer in it. Says it's the key to making the whole system work.
Okay, a weekly review. I'm not going to lie, that sounds a little intimidating.
I get it. It can seem like a lot, but we'll dive into that later and talk about how to make it manageable, even enjoyable.
Okay, I'm willing to give it a shot. So we've got capture, clarify, organize, reflect. What's the 5th stage?
The 5th stage is engage, and this is where you actually start taking action, but you're doing it from a place of, clarity and control.
So it's about moving from that feeling of overwhelm to a place of, calm, focused action.
Exactly. You're not just reacting to whatever's thrown at you. You're making conscious choices about what to do and when to do it.
This is already making so much sense. I'm really excited to dig into the specifics, like that capture stage. You mentioned it being both daunting and liberating.
Yeah. It's definitely both, but I think it's the perfect place to start because once you've captured everything, you can start to breathe a little easier.
Okay, let's unpack that a bit more. What does it actually look like to capture everything? Like, how do we get all that stuff out of our heads and into a system we trust?
Well, Alan talks about doing a mind sweep. Think of it like a brain dump,
Right.
Just get it all out, whatever's taking up space in your head, tasks, ideas, worries, everything.
So just grab a notebook or open a note-taking app and let it all flow out.
Exactly. No judgment, no editing, just get it all out there.
Okay, so we're talking about more than just tasks here. It's about capturing anything that's taking up mental space,
Yeah.
whether it's work-related or personal or just a random thought that keeps popping up.
Exactly. And you know what? It's amazing how much lighter you feel once you get all that stuff out of your head.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's like decluttering your mind.
Right. And once you've captured everything, you can start to make sense of it. You can start to see the patterns, the priorities, the things that really matter.
This is brilliant. I'm already feeling a sense of relief just thinking about it. But now I'm curious. Once we've done this massive brain dump, how do we tackle that mountain of stuff? I imagine that's where things start to feel really overwhelming for people.
That's where the clarify stage comes in, and it's all about making decisions about what each item actually means and what you're going to do with it.
All right, so we've got this item in front of us. What's the first question we ask ourselves?
The first question is, what is it?
What is it? Seems pretty straightforward.
Right. But sometimes it's not as obvious as you think.
Okay, I can see that. Like, I get emails all the time. I'm not even sure what they're asking me to do.
Exactly. So you got to figure that out first.
So define what it is, and then what?
Then you ask, is it actionable?
Mm.
Does it require me to do something?
Okay, because if it doesn't, then it's either trash or it goes in the someday maybe pile, right?
Right. You're getting it.
All right, so what if it is actionable? What then?
Then, the magic question, the heart of GTD. What's the next action?
Ah, the next action.
And it has to be a physical, visible action, something you can actually do.
Okay, so it's not enough to say, oh, I need to work on that project.
Nope. You got to be specific. What's the very next thing you need to do to move that project forward?
Okay, I can see how that would make a big difference. It's about moving from vague intentions to concrete action.
Exactly. And to help you with that, Alan introduces this great rule, the 2-minute rule.
The 2-minute rule, okay, I've heard of that, but I've always been a little skeptical. It seems too simple.
I know, right? But it works. If the next action takes less than 2 minutes, just do it right then.
Just do it, huh? Okay, give me an example.
Sure, let's say you get an email that just needs a quick reply. Instead of flagging it to deal with later, you take 2 minutes, bang it out, and hit send.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. It's about eliminating those little tasks that can really pile up.
Exactly. They take up way more mental energy than they deserve.
Okay, so we're tackling those 2-minute tasks. What about the ones that take longer?
That's where the organized stage comes in, and that's what we'll talk about next.
All right, I'm ready. Bring on the organization.
Coming right up.
Okay, so we've captured all those random thoughts and to-dos floating around. We've clarified what needs action. I'm ready to get organized.
That's the spirit. Organizing, this is where we really start to build that system.
Right. So you mentioned lists earlier.
Ah, yes, the lists.
So what kind of lists are we talking about here?
Well, Alan suggests a few key ones. First up is your projects list.
Hold on, projects. Before we even get to projects, where do those individual tasks go, the ones we just clarified?
Good point. You're right. We got to separate projects from single action tasks.
Okay, so a project is something that has multiple steps.
Exactly. Like launching a new website, planning a vacation, those are projects, and those go on your projects list.
Got it. So it's like a high-level overview of everything that's in progress.
Exactly. Now, those individual tasks, the next actions,
Yeah, where do they go?
those go on your next actions lists.
More lists.
Okay.
Okay, I like where this is going.
And here's the cool part. He suggests organizing these lists by context.
Context.
Yeah, like where you are or what resources you need. So you might have a calls list, an errands list, an at computer list.
Oh, I see. So you're grouping tasks based on when and where you can do them?
Right. Makes things so much more efficient, right?
This is brilliant. I'm already starting to visualize how this would work.
Right. And
Yeah.
it frees up so much mental space. You're not constantly trying to remember what you need to do. Where,
Okay, so we've got projects, next actions. What else?
well, we've got to have the calendar, of course.
Ah, the calendar, my nemesis.
A lot of people struggle with the calendar, but Alan has a very specific way of using it.
Oh, yeah. How's that?
Only time-specific items go on the calendar. Meetings, appointments, deadlines.
Okay, so it's not a dumping ground for every single thing I hope to accomplish.
Nope. It's about protecting your time, being realistic about what you can actually do.
All right, that makes sense. What about all the stuff I'm waiting on other people for? Those can really clutter up my mind, too.
Absolutely. For those, we have the waiting for list.
Waiting for, that's a good one. I like it.
It helps you keep track of things without having to hold them in your head.
So it's like delegating without losing track of what's going on.
Exactly. And then There's one more list that I think is super helpful.
Another one? Okay, hit me.
This is the someday maybe list.
Ah, yes, the land of dreams deferred.
Exactly. This is where you put those ideas, those projects that you want to do someday, but not right now.
Okay, so it's like a holding pen for all those things that we don't want to forget about, but that aren't urgent.
You got it. It keeps them out of your active workflow, but you can always revisit them later.
Okay, I am loving this system, but I gotta be honest, setting it all up, it feels like a lot of work.
It is an investment, but once it's set up, it really does make a huge difference.
But what's to stop me from, falling back into my old habits? How do I make sure this system actually sticks?
That's where the reflect stage comes in. That's where the weekly review really shines.
Okay, the weekly review, you mentioned it earlier. I gotta admit, 2 hours a week to review my system. That seems like a lot.
I hear you, but it doesn't have to be a huge block of time. You can break it up, do it in smaller chunks.
Okay, that makes me feel better. But what exactly are we doing during this weekly review?
It's all about getting clear, current, and complete.
Clear, current, complete.
If you're going through your lists, processing any loose ends, updating your calendar, making sure everything is up to date.
So it's like a weekly tune-up for our system?
Exactly. And it's amazing how much lighter you feel after doing it. Like you've got a handle on things.
Okay, you're selling me on this, but why Friday afternoon? Why is that the recommended time?
Well, Alan suggests Friday afternoon
Yeah.
because it's a natural break in the week. You can clear the decks, tie up loose ends, and head into the weekend with a clear mind.
Okay, I like that it's like closing out the week and preparing for the next one.
Right. But again, you can adjust the timing to fit your own schedule. The key is to be consistent.
Consistency, got it. Okay, so we've captured, clarified, organized, reflected. Now, how do we actually decide what to do?
That's a great question. That brings us to the engage stage. Now we're moving from planning to action.
Right. But with all these lists and projects, it still seems like it could be overwhelming. How do we choose what to focus on?
Well, Alan suggests using 4 criteria: context, time available, energy available, and priority.
Okay, I like this. It's like a decision-making framework.
Exactly. So first, context. What can you realistically do right now, given your location and what you have available?
Right, so if I'm at my computer, it makes sense to work on tasks from my at computer list.
Exactly. And if you're out running errands, you can tackle things from your errands list.
Makes sense. Okay, what about time available?
Well, how much time do you have before your next commitment? If you only have 15 minutes, it's probably not a good time to start a big project, right?
Right, got to be realistic about how much we can actually accomplish.
Exactly. Now, energy available.
Oh, this is a big one for me. I definitely have times when I'm more productive than others.
We all do. So pay attention to your energy levels. When you're feeling super focused, tackle those challenging tasks. When you're feeling drained, maybe do something less demanding.
So it's about working with our natural rhythms, not against them.
Exactly. And finally, priority.
Yes, priority, the big one. How do we make sure we're working on the things that really matter?
That's where you got to connect with your values, your goals. Ask yourself, what's most important to me right now?
So it's not just about getting things done, it's about getting the right things done.
Exactly. This framework, it helps you make those decisions more consciously.
I love this. But I'm wondering, does Alan offer any guidance on thinking about our work on a bigger scale? Like, we've talked about tasks and actions, but what about those bigger picture goals and aspirations? How do we make sure we're moving in the right direction?
You're thinking like a true GPD pro. And yes, Alan does address that. He has this model called the 6-level model for reviewing work.
6 levels. Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So it starts at the 50,000-foot level, which is all about your life purpose, your big why.
Whoa, that's getting pretty philosophical.
It is. But it's important to connect with that. It gives meaning to everything else.
Okay, I can see that. So what comes after life purpose?
Then we move down to the 40,000-foot level, which is your 3 to 5 year vision.
So this is where we start thinking about those bigger goals, those milestones we want to achieve.
Exactly. Then 30,000 feet, 1 to 2 year goals.
Okay, so we're breaking down those long-term visions into more manageable chunks.
Right. Then 20,000 feet, areas of responsibility.
Areas of responsibility, what does that mean?
These are the roles you play in your life, at work, at home, in your community.
Oh, I see. So it's like identifying all the different hats we wear.
Exactly. Then 10,000 feet, current projects, the things you're actively working on right now.
Okay, so we're starting to connect the dots between those high-level goals and our day-to-day actions.
Right. And finally, the runway, the ground level, those immediate next actions.
So, by reviewing our work at all 6 levels, we make sure everything is aligned, that our daily actions are contributing to our bigger goals.
Exactly. It's a powerful way to stay focused and motivated.
I love this. It's like having a roadmap for our lives.
It is. And the best part is, by regularly revisiting these levels, you'll naturally start to prioritize more effectively.
Right. You'll be able to say no to the things that don't matter and yes to the things that do.
Exactly. Okay, before we wrap up this section, can we go back to that weekly review for a minute? I'm
Mm.
still a little apprehensive about finding the time for it.
Yeah, I get it. It can seem daunting, but remember, it doesn't have to be a huge block of time.
Right. You can break it up, do it in smaller chunks, whatever works for you.
Okay, so flexibility is key. Any other tips for making it less, well, less of a chore?
Make it a ritual. Find a time that works for you. Create a cozy atmosphere. Put on some music. Maybe light a candle. Turn it into something you enjoy.
Ooh, I like that. Like a self-care practice for my productivity system.
Exactly. And don't just focus on the past week. Look ahead, too. Review your upcoming commitments. Anticipate any challenges.
So it's about planning for the week ahead, not just cleaning up the past week.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to experiment. Find what works best for you. Maybe you prefer a digital system. Maybe you like pen and paper. Just make it your own.
Make it your own. That's great advice. Okay, this has been so helpful. But before we move on, I want to circle back to that mind like water idea. We've talked about all the practical steps, but how do we actually cultivate that inner sense of calm and clarity?
That's a great question. And it's really the heart of what makes GTD so powerful.
That 6 levels model, that was really something. Like I never thought about connecting my daily to-dos to my overall life
It's
purpose.
pretty amazing how it all ties together, right?
It is. It really brings us back to that mind like water idea.
Yeah, mind like water.
I'll be honest, I was a little skeptical at first. It sounded a little too, I don't know, out there for me.
I get it.
But now I'm starting to see how it all fits. It's about creating that space, that mental clarity.
It's a whole philosophy. It's not just about being organized. It's about how we approach everything.
It's like cleaning out a really cluttered closet.
Oh, I love that analogy.
You finally get rid of all that stuff and you can breathe again. You can see clearly.
Right. You feel so much lighter.
Exactly. GTD, it's like that for our minds.
It is. When our minds are cluttered, it's hard to focus. We're constantly distracted. We're reacting instead of being proactive.
It's like trying to drive with a dirty windshield. You can barely see where you're going.
Perfect analogy. And GTD helps us clean that windshield so we can see clearly, so we can make conscious choices.
This has been so eye-opening. I'm already thinking about all the ways I can apply this to my own life.
I'm so glad to hear that. It really is a game changer for a lot of people.
So before we wrap up, what's the one thing, the most important takeaway that you want our listeners to remember?
You have the power to create a life that feels calm, focused, and fulfilling. It's not about being perfect. It's about finding what works for you.
I love that. It's so empowering.
It is. And it's true. We all have that power within us.
This has been amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us.
It's been my pleasure. I always love talking about GTD.
And to our listeners, if you're feeling inspired, don't wait. Start experimenting. Try implementing some of these ideas. Even just one small change can make a big difference.
Absolutely. Pick one thing and try it out. You might be surprised at the results.
And if you want to learn more, definitely check out David Allen's book.
Yes, the book is a gold mine of information.
All right, that's it for today's deep dive into getting things done. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, happy organizing.